Hello, this is our project, the Metro card machine in Lisbon for the Navigante system. So, first, to define the scope of the project, we take a look at the Metro ticket machine, the current one. It is used by hundreds of people daily, but it was originally created in 2002, what makes it a bit visually outdated for the current days. It has a huge impact on everyone that's using the Metro system, and this visually outdating is not ideal because of that. And it is not accessible for the visual impaired at all. So, our objectives and the hypothesis of this project were that a better interface will allow for users to buy tickets faster and more confidently. A new input method will allow for a higher accessibility, and a modern interface will reflect Navigante's new visual identity that was introduced and launched a couple years back. So, to take a look at the current machine, it is developed and maintained solely by the Metro of Lisbon, but it uses and accepts the same Navigante cards that were introduced a couple years back that works across all of Lisbon's metropolitan area. Another machine that also exists is made by the Transportes Metropolitanos de Lisboa that launched a Navigante machine available at some specific shops, but it is all touchscreen, so it's still not ideal for the visually impaired, and it's only in Portuguese, so it doesn't work for tourism at all. And it can only recharge the monthly passes. It doesn't offer any other options as the single tickets for the bus, metro, and trains. So, to understand better our use case, we conducted some interviews at 3 metro stations, Marquês de Pombal, Baixo Chiado, and Caio Sodré. 13 people were interviewed around between Lisbon citizens and tourists from different countries. Our script was focused on questions like how satisfied they were with the machine, what was their goal, so to understand what did they want to do when using the machine, and how easily did they do it. Asking if they could share any frustrations they could have had while using the machine, and how clarified they were about the prices they were gonna pay. Was the interaction with the machine as they expected? So did any surprises happen? And is there anything you would change as an open overall question to end the interview? We would also ask, depending on the interview process and the conversation flow, what they liked and didn't like about the machines, what was their motivations to interact, so their objectives, what they wanted to do. If any frustrations happen, their expectations, if they expected something to occur and something else happened, and to pay attention at their interaction styles, so to pay attention and look at how they interacted with the machine. Our main takeaway points from these interviews were that the current language selection options weren't clear, many people didn't even see they existed. The lack of explanations make it hard for users to choose which ticket to buy, so they knew the ticket names, but there was no explanation on what these names meant, what these tickets were. And many times the tourists needed extra help either by the metro securities and workers or by other passengers that happened to be around. Those who already use the machine every month, they do it usually to recharge their monthly pass. They are already used to the machine and didn't have many problems. We then analyzed the interviews and the notes we took and condensed them, organizing in short post-it notes. This made it easier to identify common themes like pain points, interests, motivations, and expectations, and then we made a list of priorities based on the themes to create a clear roadmap for our project. Based on that, we also made 2 personas. One was to reflect the people who live in Lisbon. So one is a young professional in Lisbon, and the second is a French tourist who is also blind. So our 2 main points: tourists, blind users to make it more accessible, and people who live in Lisbon. To our prototype, we also did a bit of the user flow, so we have the welcome screen, and then users go to a language selection. Currently, the language selection is done on the welcome screen, what reduces one screen, but since the language selection was so hidden, we think that adding this extra step makes it much clearer and easier to use while not adding much of extra workload. So for those who want Portuguese, you can just press again the main button and it goes. And those who need the extra language, they can have it much easier. Then you can choose between buying a new card or reloading your current card, the one you already have. If you choose to buy a new card, you get to decide how many cards you want, so just for you or more, and then choose your ticket. If it is an individual ticket, like bus, train or metro, you get to select how many tickets. If not, if it's a monthly or daily pass, it's just one, you go directly to the payment method. Then tax information, and here we noted that the current machine uses the name NIF. It just asks if users wants to add a NIF, a número de identificação fiscal, but foreigners doesn't know what a NIF is. So for our project, this should get a new, more international name. And then the process is done. End screen. First option, we decided to do two options here in the prototypes to then compare and see which one would work better. Option 1 uses a wheel controller as the input. So this physical interface will allow for blind and visually impaired people to have touch feedback, mechanical feedback. And the idea is that this one button does it all. So rotating the wheel would allow for scrolling between the options, and pressing this wheel selects the current option you are seeing. For the visual aspect, we started drafting many options for the interface, and then we ended up getting closer to the idea of incorporating the wheel in the visual aspect of the interface. So this one is how we got the final version we made, and the options rotate in the screen as you rotate the physical input wheel. So to the right, it rotates also to the right, and to the left, it rotates to the left, and the current option is always on top. This way, it also enables text-to-speech technology that can read and tells blind and all the users what's currently on the screen. So this is our language screen option, then the buying or recharging card option. Choose your ticket screen so you can rotate the wheel and navigate through all the options, and this way it also makes easier as you rotate the transit options, highlight turn on or off, so you can easily compare which ones now you get to use and which ones don't, to better compare the ticket options and decide which one you want. Then how many tickets, rotate to the right to add, left to reduce, and your payment method, also with the clarification of the price gonna pay by tickets and cards, to make sure people know exactly what they are getting. Then our second option was inspired by ATM and its input method of the buttons on the side, right and left of the screen. Using these physical buttons allows also for blind people to sense each option and receive touch feedback, and these buttons would then be touch sensitive, so when hovering one of the buttons, the machine would be able to read which option it is. So also again the same idea of using physical buttons for allow it to have an easier and more accessible method input for everyone. Then the screens, now they use this other grid that positions the buttons to accordingly to the buttons, to the physical buttons on this ATM machine. So language selection, buying a new card or recharging, how many cards you want, then the options are already pre-selected here for each one of these 8 buttons. The ticket options, so you get to see, compare the everything on a single screen, and then payment method. Then we also made a physical prototype for the testing sessions that would be done later. So this here is a very basic prototype, but to allow users to sense the physical rotating wheel and its physical mechanical feedback, and a draft of how this would be on the final machine. Then for the ATM, we used a keyboard. We covered all the other buttons and left just these 8 buttons on each side to allow users to have this also the physical sense of using a ATM machine. Then for the prototype, we had some limitations. We couldn't connect the physical prototype to the Figma prototype, so we used some sensors here because being under this red cap there is a physical rotating knob sensor. We connected it to Arduino, but it couldn't make it work with Figma, so we mimicked it in a Wizard of Oz scheme of we would look at the user, the tester hands, and then read. I myself would read the screen, and then a colleague would press the buttons left and right to use the Figma prototype. So we mimicked these the functionality of the prototype this way. Then to better understand which option is better, the wheel or the ATM, we made the tests. First, a test protocol, basic, asking for age, if they are familiar to the Metro machines, how often they use it. We would then cover the person eyes because these tests are meant to mimic a blind person usability. Then explain the task and allow them to do the task. We would record the time to perform, number of errors, and make some questions after the self-reported confidence rating, task performance rates, and user perception tests. We made 2 different tests, one easy and one difficult test. The idea of the easy one was just to buy a single ticket just to see how well the machine and the overall experience was. And then a difficult test was to reload the card for a whole weekend. So we wanted to hard test it and see how well this would happen, because there are multiple possible outcomes. People can choose multiple different ways of achieving and accomplishing this task. So we first made 2 pre-tests. We covered participants' eyes, explained the task to them, positioned the prototype in front of them, and said good luck. This idea was just to test the protocol flow and see how well this was working. And then we also did 2 easy tests to test first the basic ideas of the interface. We understood the natural movements of the user, we measured the difficulty levels, we observed their hands and tendencies, and we gathered feedback from them. The easy tests were easy, so we then and everything went well, so we then proceeded to the hard tests. This idea was to hard test the interface, so test all the interface screens, have the participants all the way deep in the hierarchy of information, testing the whole flow and finding possible interface problems. One of these problems we found was that zapping was being chosen over the daily pass. So for our second task, the hard tests, it would be better for users to choose one of the day pass, for example. And since zapping was the second option, many ended up choosing it instead of the daily pass. We then thought one possible iteration for this problem would be to swap the zapping position and move it to the last option, because this way it also makes more sense, as zapping is the only ticket option here that uses cash. You add cash balance to your card, while the other ones you buy tickets, so it would also make sense for it to be separately in the end, as it's also more used by residents, and these machines ended up being a lot used by tourists. So this option goes to the end, as those who use it already know it exists and it's there. Then for the option 2, the ATM machine, we just made 5 tests on the hard option. Again, the same objectives this time, And for our results, we first had the SUS, the System Usability Scale score, and for the easy and hard tests. And for the option 2, only for the hard tests. We can see here it's very similar in the score of the hard test. But then for the SAM results, where participants answer to these questions after, to these graded, they are experiencing pleasure, dominance, and arousal after they interacted with the machine. We got to see a bit of a difference. First, for the rotating wheel, we can see the pilot tests had lower dominance. This is probably due to a better explanation of the task in our part. So removing the pilot tests, we can see a better level in the rotating wheel in dominance and pleasure, and also a lower arousal. This probably means that people felt more comfortable and less stressed, let's say this way, to use the rotating wheel than the ATM machine. The higher pleasure also allows us to see that people found it pleasant. People liked the idea of the rotating wheel and navigating with this fun, different input method. So in conclusion, the version 1, the first option with a rotation wheel, showed up to be better than the ATM machine, the option 2. Users often have to have a long explanation and ask for help during tests with the ATM machine. So this is the thing that didn't show up in the numerical test results, but you could see in our notes that this didn't happen with the rotation wheel. So in the option 1, we gave 0 explanations about how the input method worked, and users still found their way around and accomplished the tasks. As they rotated to the right, things changed to the right. Rotating to the left, things changed to the left. It was very easy for them to understand, and this explains the higher dominance ratings. So, in conclusion, the rotating wheel proved to be a great interface for blind users and all other users, with our testers being able to accomplish their tasks. The visual aspects of the UI also make sure that sane people can use the machine, making this option great for all kinds of users. So, thank you and hope you enjoy.